Without further ado, let's say hello to Dominick. Dominick, thank you so much for doing this, my friend. Congratulations on the big win.
Thanks, Ariel.
Man, can I ask you about something? I was saying this at the beginning of the show, and I was wondering how you feel about it. There's this basketball player named Derrick Rose, and Derrick Rose in 2012 tore his ACL. He's the youngest NBA player to win the MVP. Back in the day, it was 2011. And he's come all the way back, and he's still a factor in the NBA. He plays on the Knicks. He hates when people say vintage Derrick Rose. He hates when people say that because he's like, no, I'm not my old self. I'm a new version of myself, and I think I'm a better version of myself. Do you relate to that? Do you understand where he's coming from when people say, because I was saying vintage Dominick Cruz, and I'm like, wait, maybe Dom thinks he's better. Maybe he's not vintage. Maybe he's a new Dominick Cruz, and he likes the way he fights now more than he did back in the day. Do you understand where he's coming from when he gets upset when people say that?
Everybody's got their own ways of dealing with stuff. I do a lot that I can to let go of the things I can't control, Ariel. I actually followed Derrick Rose and used him for a lot to draw a lot of inspiration when I was going through my knee surgeries. There was only a couple like basketball players that are like high level basketball players or NFL players that had gone. There's even some NFL players that have gone through 3 knee surgeries. Adrian Peterson was one who did it and came back and looked just as fast and just as good. And he came back really fast. So I drew from athletes like Derrick Rose a lot to get through my times. But one of the things I learned in all my knee surgeries is what you resist persists. So the more that I resist what people think about me and what they want to say about me, the more it's going to be said and the more I'm going to be what I'm resisting.
Wow.
So I've kind of just learned to let go of it. And what people see in me and whatever their perspective of me is, it's their interpretation. They can have whatever they want. I'm like, I have nothing to defend. I have nothing that I'm going to really have a problem with. And if I'm being honest, there were parts of me that I could understand hearing that vintage me. When I fought Casey Kenny, I'll break it down as an analyst for everybody. The reason that might not have looked like vintage Cruz, as you're saying, even though I was strong and ready in that fight as I was for Pedro, is it's a lefty. So he's a not just a lefty, but Casey Kenny is a true lefty. So he's a left-handed fighter. And when you do that, it twists the game around. It's like if you take the best Formula One race car drivers that are doing the windy roads and stuff, and then you flip the course around, the people who win it might not win it the same. It's going to be a completely different course. So that's how it is facing a southpaw or facing somebody who switches back and forth, So it made the fight different. Yeah, every styles make fights. And then don't forget that when I started early, I created a style for,
No problem.
I created a style for, you got to think like the old WEC days, there was a style, Pedro has that style that was everybody. Uh-huh. Everybody was fighting like Pedro. Linear lines, powerful, and good takedown defense in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That was the style to have when I was coming up in the ranks. And so everything I did was kind of built around dealing with that. So yeah, pulled out the great in me facing Pedro Munhoz.
Did you enjoy your performance? Are you happy with your performance on Saturday?
I mean, you can't be completely happy when you get dropped ever. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't know that happened. So when I'm in the fight, you're just in the fight. To be honest, when I was in the fight, and that happened, I thought that the only things that I saw was we got into a scuffle and I missed the punch from my pivot in. And then when I missed the punch, I got back up and the scramble had me on my balance was off, but I didn't know I had been hit at all. Mm. So I just thought my balance was off from the scuffle. And then when I hit the fence, then I threw a high kick and then I hit the fence. When I hit the fence, things just felt dreamy, I guess, but you don't know that you're hurt. You're just you're just in it. And then I guess he hit me there. And now that I've seen the film, he hit me with the hook again when I leaned against the fence. And that kind of buckled me a little to a single. So in my head, I hit the fence to a single leg.
Wow.
There was no punches landing.
Wow.
So I'm on a single leg and then I'm going down.
Just skip that whole part.
that doesn't exist. It's like that moment of time never existed. I received no punches in that entire moment of time.
Do you remember?
In my own head.
Yeah. Do you remember the first round going into the second?
I remember everything after that scuff. Like
Wow.
I only don't remember what I told you, which was the 2 times I ate punches. Everything else, I was there. I was completely there. I just didn't like, it was, my body went into complete autopilot for sure. But that's why for me, it's so important to get the sparring rounds in, because you're not always the hammer. Every now and then in these fights, you're going to none of us know what's going to happen no matter what we say. I mean, you can try to prepare the best you can, but if you're the nail in there, do you have the rounds in to not get finished? Mm-hmm. Because I've been the nail in practice. When you're facing 2-3 guys in a 5-round session, it's hard to not be a nail when you're facing 2 or 3 guys. And so being in those moments where I get rocked in practice and these guys are still coming after to kill me in practice, those are the rounds that you find out who you are to show up on these nights and be willing to die.
It's actually one of the first things you said to Joe Rogan. I got my sparring rounds in, which led me to think maybe recently you couldn't get your sparring rounds in. Like, why was that such a big deal to note that almost in like the first things you said in the post-fight interview?
When you go through as many injuries as I have, Ariel, one of the things you want in a body like mine is just to get through a long stint of hard training with no injuries. That's it. Forget the fight, forget everything. All that matters is doing this. And I did it. So I was like, wow, like not one thing happened to me. And I have a system now that keeps me healthy because of the physical therapy that I do. That at Sports Performance in San Diego, California, they do an amazing job with me. I see them twice a week. The PI did an amazing job with me. I saw them every day, the week of the fight. And when you're keeping your muscles loose, the tendons don't get tight, things stay sharp, and your body's more durable, essentially, if you stay on the body rehab, which I've done. And that allowed me to get through all the sparring rounds over that period of time from fight 1 to fight 2 in that calendar year. And just training smart. Yes, I'm fighting and training really hard and sparring really hard, but I'm doing the rehab. You know, I heard once LeBron James spent $1.5 million fixing his body during a season. Now, do I have that kind of money to fix my body? Absolutely not. But could I create some sort of percentage of that and be smart about it? Yes, I can. So just move out of scarcity, you know, put some money aside, work some shows. If I work a couple shows in between those fights, I can pay for my physical therapy and set that money on the side for that. And now I have a physical therapy stipend that will get me to my next fight as well. Everything kind of flows together, the system that I'm piecing.
It's amazing for those who have followed your career. Like, here you are, and your rivals from yesteryear are no longer around. And not only are you still around, you're thriving. Like, Faber's not around anymore. Benavidez retired recently. Renan Barão's not around. Crazy. December of 2016, UFC 207, in the same building 5 years ago, there's Cody Garbrandt beating you. And now on the same card, you're still at 135 winning, and he's going through a rough period. Who could have predicted that 5 years later? So is this the secret to it? The fact that you've been able to take care of your body and be smart about things and look at your body like a pro athlete does, as opposed to just continuing to go and wear it down?
I'm smart enough to know that the greatest understanding we can have is that we're never going to understand everything. Huh. We're never going to, you're just not. That's when you can understand, you're never going to understand. You find peace, Ariel. I don't know, man. I can't tell you like I'm supposed to have some sort of answers to this. This is crazy. I'm a prize fighter. Like, nobody knows anything. But I will say that after I lost my fight against Cody, I did say, let's see where these people are at. I've been here. I went 10 years without losing. That's hard to do with injuries or without. It doesn't matter when if you're injured and then you come back and you're facing the number 1 or 2 guys in the division. It's like that injury should not say that you were out and safe. You were never safe. There was always somebody there that was supposed to be better than you. And you were just coming back to face the next best guy without the repetitions, without the rounds, without the sparring, without the mat time. Some people say, well, that equates to rest. Well, then if that equates to rest, then why are we talking about ring rust? Mm. So it's like, this is how I can take everybody's narratives and just say, stop it. None of this matters. You guys are being silly. Come on. I'm not you. So I'm not going to let you limit me to what you believe. That's why you're not here. And it's not a bag on anybody, but it's like, open your mind up. You people don't know what your bodies are capable of. It's all of your bodies, everybody, you, Ariel, like we're all capable of crazy things. And I think sometimes, you know, when you watch fighters and why we can all relate is we're willing to push it and see how capable they are.
That line you just mentioned at the beginning of that answer reminds me of my favorite line ever that I repeat all the time, which was the line that you told me after you beat Dillashaw. The greatest moment of my life is when I realized I didn't need a belt to be happy. That line right there is a variation of that line right there about, you know, not knowing things and all that. You're a wise old man.
It could be. Let's not go for the old man stuff, but
Sorry.
I would say that, you know, when you go through, you get a lot of time to think when you've had this many injuries and this many ups and downs in my career that I've had. A lot of time to think. And, you know, that's actually been the greatest gift, because when was the last time you just did nothing? I had somebody say this to me. There's a friend of mine named Danny Do Nothing. And I said, why do they call you Danny Do Nothing? He said, well, when's the last time you did nothing? And I thought about it and I was like, well, what does nothing look like? I mean, nothing. Like sat and did nothing, laid on the couch, did nothing. I said, it's been a long time. I'm always doing something. He said, exactly. It's hard. I've tried to bring people with me to do nothing for a week and they lose their minds. It's one of the hardest things anybody can do is do nothing. And when you're injured, you pretty much have to do nothing. And so you have to find a new way to do something. And that new something has to be your journey within. What journey within can you find? Because that's martial arts as well. When you go through a martial arts training camp, you're going through a journey within of the ups and downs, of the challenges, of the setbacks that happen to you. So it's been a crazy ride, and I'm grateful that I get to challenge myself on the stage. It's the greatest organization in the world for the level of athletes that I get to compete with. They get to challenge me, that I challenge them.
You're enjoying it. You still love it, right? You love the process. You love everything about it.
Yeah, I love it. I don't like to use the word sacrifice anymore, because sacrifice comes from like somewhat of a victim mentality. I feel it's more of I've chosen this life. And so, yeah, like a lot of people don't know why I live the way I live, but I just have a big vision.
Which is what?
The big vision is just who can you make a difference for and how. And like we're in a time right now when you can stand up and make a difference just by being something different on a stage that everybody's watching. That's a lot, and not everybody chooses that.
You were referring to this in your post-fight interview as well. Coming together.
Yeah. I've never been more serious about this, Ariel. Like we're divided as an entire world right now, more than I've ever seen. I think everybody can relate to that for many reasons. And I think it comes down to we're making each other right and wrong. And really, if we're all one, you know, you can't have right without wrong. You can't have win without loss. So they're the same. It's the matter of duality. They're one and the same. You need one to have the other. So instead of making each other right and wrong, if we could just come to a place of neutrality and not judgment, then we can come back together. Even if you think you need to wear a mask at my family gathering, okay, but we could still be together. You be on that side of the table, I'll be on this side of the table. Nobody has to be wrong. We just got to be together. That's the only way that it's going to actually mend itself. Not separate. Not you go here, you go to this camp, you go to that camp, you stay separate here. That's not what human beings are. That's not what we are. It's not supposed to be that way. That's not how we're built as a race.
Is this fixable? Do you believe that this is an attainable goal?
I know it might sound crazy to hear from me, but love is the only answer. I mean that. Love is the only thing that's going to bring us together. And if you're not being love, then you're being fear. Those are the two roots. And if you're being fear, then you're going to judge and you're going to want to be right. And if you're being love, then you're not going to judge and you're going to allow yourself to be neutral and be in possibility. You know, if we're coming from a place of being right, then we're not in possibility. If we're not in possibility, then you can't create endless possibilities. If you're right, you're at a fixed answer. That's the end of the road. That's it. I'm right. And the people that are right scare me because you seem to know everything. Nobody knows anything. So be in possibility. I encourage you. And then that'll allow there not to be a right and wrong conversation, which won't create judgment, which won't create separation. This is what we need right now. Not I'm right and you're wrong and I know and you don't. Nobody knows anything. It's all a big mind play to pretend that you know, because we're scared. The fear drives that thought, but we don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does. So anybody who says they do, they're riding that fear train. You don't know. There's no set answers. We're all in possibility here. If you're gonna really create, we gotta be in possibility right now and be together.
In retrospect, Dom, great week for you, vintage. Dom, vintage, not vintage, whatever you want to say. Just tremendous stuff. You turn back the clock.
Whatever you guys see,
Yeah.
Let's go on with it.
In retrospect, do you regret what you said about Daniel Cormier at the media day because of who he is in your life and all the attention and everything that happened afterwards?
I don't regret what I said because I hadn't eaten in 3 days. I hadn't drank in 2 days. They're asking me questions. I spoke from my heart. I never really regret what I say because I wasn't mean. I was very loving. What I regret, I guess, is where I said it. Maybe I shouldn't have said it there because then that allowed the media to take it and do whatever they wanted with it. And I said it after my post-fight too. There was a medium. I gave kudos to Mark Goddard and the Las Vegas Commission for the great job they did with the show. And I heard it in that moment in the interview. He said, well, look, you took a stab at Keith Peterson, I noticed, and you gave kudos to Mark Goddard. And I said, hold on 1 second. That's exactly what happened with me and Cormier right there. Is whatever got said, you can twist it and hear your interpretation and write a headline that everybody's going to click. That's the world we live in today. But the truth is, I never said anything bad about Keith Peterson. You did. And I gave kudos to Mark Goddard, and that got turned into me talking bad about Keith Peterson. How does that happen? That's the world we live in today because we take interpretations and we make them facts. And now everything's a mess. And that's what's happening on the internet. And that's what allows all this gray area that nobody knows what the heck's going on anymore. That's why we got to stay together, eye to eye in person. And when you stay and you look at somebody and you say, I didn't say that, you did. You know, it creates an accountability conversation and we can move forward in a clear place. And so I did that. And that's what I could have done in that interview with what I said about Cormier. Look, you and me both know I love Cormier. You love Cormier. How do you not love Cormier? He's got the personality of gold. I get that. This was a completely different conversation we had. This was about job and what is your job? Not everybody needs to do it your way, Dom. I hear you. The point is, what is the job of a color analyst? Not my job. Not what is my job as a color analyst. What is your job as a color analyst? Well, is it just to know off the top of your head what these guys do? Like, put yourself in their position, Cormier. Would you want somebody to watch film before you fight? Or would you want them to not? That was the only question I asked. All the other defense came from whatever else it came from. I simply asked questions.
Just curious, did you, it sounds like you at least saw part of the fight. Did you listen to the commentary? And if so, do you think he did a good job?
Yeah, I think DC always does the best job he can. And I always do the best job I can. I'm not perfect either. There's a million people in this world will hear my commentary and say, Dominick Cruz is not good. Mm. Okay, that's fine. I was happy with the commentators. And I want to make sure, and I've never said anything before. Does anybody ever notice that? I've never said a thing about the commentary until people started asking me. If you ask me, I'm going to tell you. Mm-hmm. But I have no complaints because I know that position. It's a very hard position to be in, Ariel. Mm-hmm. To say what you see and to understand what you're seeing and to break it down in a way that people can digest and understand and learn on the other end is important to me. That doesn't have to be important to everybody else.
It was a huge story. I can't believe how big of a story. I said afterwards, That's just you. You're the kind of guy who's going to say what you feel in the moment. You're not going to sugarcoat it. And DC's endearing quality is that he actually doesn't take this stuff personally. The fact that you guys can sit down minutes later, talk about it, and I can guarantee you he didn't run to the bosses. He didn't complain. He didn't try to bury you. He didn't try to throw you under the bus. He's not insecure, basically, and you're not insecure. So you're almost like the only two people on the planet that I can think of that could have a moment like that and not have any lingering resentment. You know what I'm saying? And
that's beautifully said. And I think that's what we're missing in the leadership of this world right now.
Well, thank you.
Is communications like that and just can be hashed out. Like, we don't got to hate each other at the end of it. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. We're just here and we're clear. And I love you, Cormier, and you love me too. And let's move on. Mm-hmm. Let's get better. Let's be better.
Chito Vera called you out afterwards. Everyone I'm sure Suga wants you. Who do you want? Who makes sense now in this path? I mean, I feel like now we're back on this title path again. So who do we want?
Yeah, what I'm hearing most from people, like, I haven't really made a decision. I haven't talked to Shelby or anything, but I'm hearing most that the old legacy fight that never happened between me and Aldo is right there. And I think that I can completely understand that. I get how that's an interesting fight for the world. To fight Aldo is, an honor. It's an honor. Like, think of the things this dude's done. And he's also been through the ups and downs of his career and made his way back in an extremely respectful form. So that fight, I understand how that could make sense, but I'm going to sit down and, we got to do the talks and see what happens. But you know me, Ariel, like, I show up and I do my job, and I'm not a pick and choose there. Obviously, people have been calling me out my whole career. People have been comparing me to other people my whole career. I've done a really good job at not allowing that to make my decisions for me on my own end. And I'm not going to start doing that now. So let's just see where we go.
Realistically, when would you like to return? When makes sense for you? I'm assuming you're good. You're healthy. I mean,
I'm healthy. Yeah, my foot's swollen from kicking shins a little bit here and there, but that's it. I'll probably be back to full training in about 2 weeks tops. I'll take this week, just get the swelling down in my foot. And once the swelling's down, I'll be able to get back to it, grappling, whatever else. And as long as I stay on the bike, I got to see where the talks go with the people I'm fighting too. It's kind of a mixture of things, Ariel. It's not just one thing, especially this stage of my career. I'm not in a rush. I'm working a full-time job while I do this too, just to make sure that I got, bills paid and whatnot, and not just relying on prize fighting to get my life together. That's one thing that I'll say is a lot different too is, in 2010, when I won my world title against Brian Bowles, I quit my job. I was teaching 19 classes a week for $20 a class. Wow. And I was making $1,000 a month before I fought Brian Bowles. And after I won that fight, I was like, whoa, I'm retired. I'm quitting working and I'm just going to train full time. And I did that. Bam. And I didn't lose. Then I never would have thought that as I got up, I would get more jobs. As you grow up and you get more titles, you think you're going to have less jobs, right? That's my thought. Like, I'm going to have less work to do,
right,
and more money. And not hating on anything. I'm just saying that it didn't work that way. So I end up having more jobs now than I've ever had in my life while I'm still grinding and peaking in my career and trying to do my best there.
What are your other jobs?
Prize fight. Well, I'm a color commentator.
Right.
I'm an ESPN analyst. I do that show called Unlocking Victory, which is a lot of fun. That takes up, 2-3 weekends a month. Sometimes 4 weekends a month, if you think about it, because each one of those is on a weekend and it takes flying out and it takes going somewhere. And when you're doing that with 2 practices a day, 6 days a week, you tell me where I'm not working full time.
Yeah.
Because now I'm doing my prize fighting job Monday through Friday, and I'm doing my ESPN color commentary Unlocking Victory job on the weekend to make money. And so I'm working 7 days a week, sometimes a whole month, without stopping. And it's not complaints. I'm grateful for all these opportunities, but it trips me out that I have more work to do than I've ever had. And so to let that go for this past 12 weeks to prepare for this fight showed. And that's what I got. That's what I get to continue to do, to show up for these prize fights.
It's also a byproduct of your legendary career, of your success, and it sounds like and it looks like it's not slowing down, and that's a beautiful thing. It's great to see you thriving, smiling, victorious, and I can't wait to see what 2022 brings. We've seen some crazy things in 2021. We've seen some OGs get belts, and so I'm not counting you out just yet, Dom. I appreciate you doing this. Congratulations, and thank you for always making time for us, and thanks for always coming on and telling it like it is.
Yeah, you too, Ariel. Thanks for keeping it flowing. I know it's been hard, but you're doing a beautiful thing with the fighters and everything. Thank you for standing for us too.
Thank you. Thank you, Dom. Talk to you soon. Happy holidays.
All right.
There he is, Dominick Cruz joining us. What a story. Who would have thought?